Welcome to Photo Finds. I am your host Kevin Yee, and this week we are here to celebrate and commemorate one of the rides that has recently closed in Orlando. I'm talking about Dragon Challenge, and before that it was known as Dueling Dragons. Now, as you probably know, this attraction just closed over the Labor Day weekend, and it's an outdoor roller coaster, as you can see, a B&M inverted, and it was located in an Islands of Adventure. So what we're going to do is not only show some pictures of the exterior. The blue track was the fire track, and the was the ice track, and the fire track, of course, being the red track. But we're also going to take you into the queue as the ride was, and as the ride was further back, actually, as well. So in recent years, you've not been able to go into the attraction queue itself with a camera or with anything metallic, but I have some archive photos that we'll walk through and have a look at. We're looking at one here, actually. This is before the Harry Potter treatment to the queue. You can see that there's nothing really except foliage there. Alright, so with that, let's also pause to reflect on the dueling nature of the ride as it originally was conceived. You can see in this picture two spots where the tracks crossed over against each other, and that's why they were called dueling, not racing, because they would sort of go at each other. And it created a certain kind of thrill if you were one of these riders and suddenly someone's feet showed up just a mere inches away from you. And that's why the ride was called Dueling Dragons, because they would do this and be timed in such a way that they would always come to these moments at the same time. This is a barrel roll over each other on the top and bottom, and you can see them doing an inversion sort of away from each other there too. The rumor has it that this was discontinued because someone got injured. Someone brought a roll of pennies or something like that, and someone got injured, and so they had to stop the dueling, and then even after that they stopped the letting people go on with any metal at all. Now, this is the original entrance to the attraction, back when it was called Dueling Dragons. You can see the fire dragon and the ice dragon are sort of fighting with each other there. And at nighttime, there was an interesting effect as well, because they had the fire on this side and a crystal that would light up to indicate the ice side. And the reverse angle of this, so now I'm standing behind them, shows you a long-gone restaurant that was over here in this zone of the park, the island, so to speak, of the Lost Continent. And this is what the entrance looked like. They had a Universal Express pass in the same entrance this way. And you can see that the wait time back then, this would have been somewhere around the early 2000s, was about 40 minutes. And here's a view of that queue. There's not much to look at except the foliage, and that's going to change later when we have the Harry Potter version of the ride. But it's just meant to kind of slowly wind you through this forest until you come upon this castle that we're going to see here. And you see that it says Dragon's Lair is up ahead. Enter not. I guess it's designed to evoke the Old English. And this is what you see from the queue mostly. And so you've come across this big castle. And it's a nice, interesting, forbidding structure. The angle we're looking at here, the castle is just off to the right. It looks very different in the Harry Potter days. They've got some large decoration over here, and the line has to go down this way a little bit to go through the metal detectors, and there's the car that they drive off into the forest. Another view of that same area where the outdoor queue goes quite a bit of ways around the outside before turning around and facing the castle directly. Now, in those days, as you see, the castle did not have an entrance straight through. In the Harry Potter years, it did. You would go straight in right here. But we would go across this bridge here and then enter off to the right. And we'll see that in the picture right after this. So this is looking straight ahead through the portcullis, and then we're going to go off to the right with the attraction. With the attraction entrance being off to the side there. It's a hole blasted in the side, and you can see dragon claw marks over the side. And this is the go ahead and zoom in on this. This is the logo for Dueling Dragons, or at least one of the logos that they were using. And there was a lot of intricate detail right from the beginning. This is one of the standout attractions in Islands of Adventure, where they had Disney level of theming right up to the bricks and through this bridge that had been broken right over the entrance there. Really just a lot to look at, and that was what made this ride stand out. And we're going to see that in the interior part of the queue as well. So kind of a lance and tournament style decoration here to separate express and regular entrance. In this first room, we're going to dwell for another shot or two here. You can see that they've got banners set up on the side. They've got these giant candle holding things up in the ceiling. Let's zoom in here a little bit and show that they've really paid some attention to detail. These things have been ripped through as though they've been attacked by a dragon as well. Turning to the right from that same room, we see these stained glass windows here. I keep confusing this, I think, with another ride elsewhere in the country which has moving stained glass. I don't think these moved, but they evoke ones that do. Now behind this room, or I guess around the corner to this room, which in the Harry Potter years was a small little turret room that housed the Triwizard Cup. This is what was on the spot where the Triwizard Cup is, sort of the turnaround in that room there. And you can see that it's something you could read if you wanted to take the time. Of course, that would only really happen if you were sort of stuck there, and this is a flash picture as well. So this is that same room without the flash picture. You can see that they've got some stained glass up here and some interesting lighting effects on the walls, and it's a little bit too dark to actually bother reading that book. From there, a long, dark hallway, rather scary looking actually, especially if there's no one else in there with you. It's darker now, darker in this picture than it was in the Harry Potter years. Now off to your left, halfway down that hallway, is a room with basically knights embedded in the walls. As you can see that they've got their pieces of metal still stuck here to the walls, and some scary writing around it, and some scary lighting. So this is with the flash turned on, so you can see some of the detail a little bit better. Of course, that ruins the theatrical effect. The whole thing is actually fairly creepy, and it's meant to be halfway to a scary Halloween type attraction. This is that same room, sort of from a reverse angle, and it's brighter in this picture than it was in real life because the camera sort of compensated for the lack of lighting. Now down to the end of the hall, and then what in the Harry Potter years would turn into a room with a bunch of candles in the ceiling, what we're seeing is a room with some frozen figures up there, dangling from the ceiling. We're going to have a look at those. So there's one early on here, sort of standing up, and then the next one, we're going to take a closer look at him, is being stretched out, and so implying some sort of torture. And then the freezing, obviously, because of the ice dragon, I guess. And yet another one, this one mounted on horseback. And finally, a reverse angle of the whole thing. And then we go around the corner into these dark tunnels. Now these tunnels had some interesting lighting. You can see some purple and some green here. It was fairly dark. It was always a little bit scary, made even scarier by the fact that there were all sorts of skeletons embedded in the walls. This is where a lot of the theming really came in. I'm going to zoom in a little bit, and you can see that there were bones all over the place, all around, and then entire skeletons up here. And candles too. The whole effect was one of like the catacombs under Paris. It was really rather creepy. And there's even some writing in here as well. Don't be a bonehead, I think, or something like that is what it said. Okay, and then the circular queue down near the bottom where there's another turn. And then finally the decision point where you decide if you're going to ride fire or ride ice. And they even had t-shirts that advertised Dueling Dragons. I think I only have a picture of the one, although I've seen others over the years. And then the Harry Potter years. This will look much more familiar and much more recent to you. The entrance, of course, looks very different now, with Dragon Challenge being prominently displayed and the Harry Potter banners showing up sort of in that entire walkway up. The Harry Potter banners announcing the Triwizard Tournament and all of the characters that we know from the books and from the movies. Now, after we get past the banners, we come to a spot where we are routed to the left. Oh, sorry, before we get to that spot, I thought this was an interesting angle of the snowman down below. This is a zoom in of the Castle Keep, the place where we're going to enter, but we're not going to go into that yet. First, we're going to go by this car, which of course represents the one they have in the movies that gets lost. And you can see that over the time, it's changed a little bit. So I'll go back a picture here, and you see that the windows are cracked, and the car is sort of run into a tree. Well, it's a different tree now, and the windows are no longer cracked. This is the more recent picture, I can tell, because it's got the metal detector's tent over on the side here. So sort of backing up from all of that, I went backwards a little bit in the queue to take a picture of the Hagrid's house, on the backside of Hagrid's house, really, and then down to the metal detector tents, and then back over to the right for this view, where we would see these banners, and kind of blocking the view of the castle actually, and then into the castle directly. Now this is that first room where the champions rest, of course, and you can see some interesting props scattered around. They've got things like the luggage, and then this firebolt broom, and then drinks that, of course, the champions aren't there to use. So this is all just props. And then, of course, the cup that is used that determines who the champion is going to be is there. Around into the next room is the Triwizard Tournament Winner Cup. This really shines. It's hard to capture in photos, but you walk around it and it gives an interesting view. Here's that long hallway, again, a lot less creepy in the Harry Potter years. And this is that room that had the knight's medal sort of embedded in the wall. It doesn't have any of that now. Still got the timbers, however. At the end of the hallway, they've added something interesting in the Harry Potter years. These are the eggs that open underwater. And this was the room that featured the frozen knights in the ceiling. It's now the candles floating in the ceiling. The walkway down through the stone caverns is a lot less creepy now. There's brighter lighting, first of all, and the skulls have been removed. There is still this door. You've just made a sort of a U-turn almost around it, which in all versions of the ride had a loud thumping and a roaring from a dragon trying to break in. So that part was always still a little bit scary. And then you get to the decision point, which looks very different now. You've got the Chinese fireball, and then there's a lighting effect there, and the Hungarian horntail has been the new name for ice. That does it for us this week. I want to thank you guys for coming along down Nostalgia Road with me there. We'll be back next time with a look around the parks at what's more recent and what's coming up next. Thanks, and we'll see you soon.